this set of recordings, we will be looking at how to recreate the music box that is available on the Epilogue Laser website. If you want to get a hold of the file, then just go to their resource section and download the file. It's under the wood section. We will take a look at how to recreate each one of the sides in each separate videos. So in this video, which is number 1, we'll be looking at recreating this side of the actual music box. So let's get started. As you can see, I've opened up the music box file and I've copied and pasted one of the sides in. It's easy just to do this type of an exercise because we can actually measure the actual side right in CorelDRAW, which then allows us to transform it, and we can then recreate our own side from scratch. First of all, let's open up the Arrange, Transformation, Position Docker. Notice that it'll dock over here on the left-hand side. I typically find it easy when we're measuring things is just to put everything up in the top left-hand corner. So let's turn off the Relative Position tab. Let's select the top left anchor or handle. And we know that if we look down here, it's 0 and 6. So our H value is going to be 0. And our vertical value is going to be 6. And because we have this up in the top left hand corner, then it's going to go right up to here because that's what our anchor says. Make sure if this is, I'm working in X5, so in X4 or less, I can just say apply. In X5, make sure the copies are at 0 and then select apply. And notice that my box is right up in the top left hand corner. I'm just going to zoom in on this area here a little bit so I can get a closer look at what we're working on. Notice here that I'm right up in the top left hand corner, and I'm in the top left hand corner not of this corner but of the actual selection handle, because if we look here, this is our intersection point right here. So let's draw a couple of guidelines here which will allow us to see what our dimensions are. I'm going to drag this over, and notice because I have snap to objects turned on, when I bring the guideline over, it'll actually say edge. Let's just delete that out. Bring over, and notice it snaps right to the actual edge of the object. And you notice here it's at 0.2459, which probably in reality it's probably a quarter of an inch. So let's type in a 5 here, press enter. So I know now that my distance from here to here is 0.25 of an inch, which basically means that these tabs are a quarter inch in size, in width. And because they're rectangles, it'll be height too. Now let's figure out where these tabs go. And notice here again I've snapped to the object and I'm at 5.75, which means I've come down a quarter of an inch. So I'm a quarter inch this way and I'm a quarter inch down, and if I pull down another guideline I'm at 5.5, which means basically I've dropped down another quarter of an inch. So I know these tabs are exactly a quarter of an inch square. So now let's drag down here, put a guideline here, and that should be at 4.5. And let's bring a guideline out to about here, and a guideline out to about here, because I'm going to use a circle here which will then trim out this area. So basically I'm looking at my guidelines, my boxes, everything's set up here. Let's just drag this over. That should be somewhere around 3. And let's bring one out here just to signify the edge, which should be 3.25. So there we basically have our guidelines for the most part set up. Now we can come back and check things if we have to, but ultimately that's probably going to be where we all need it. Let's just bring one down here for the bottom, and that's going to be at 4 inches. So now that we've got our guidelines set up, we're going to actually create a new page, and we can do that quickly by just coming down here and clicking on the add page. And now I have a second page. Now notice here that my guidelines are still set up because these are my global guidelines, and therefore because they're global they'll be in every page that I create. Now I know that basically this is my rectangle that goes from here down to here, and I can check that by coming back into the original one, and notice here that my rectangle goes from 3 inches to 1/4 of an inch, which basically means that my rectangle is 2.75 inches wide, and if we look down here it goes from 6 to 4, which means it's 2 inches tall. So let's create the rectangle. So we just come in here, let's select the rectangle tool, and again I'm just going to draw something. I'm not going to use any snap functions here. Make sure that our lock button is unlocked, and I said it needs to be 2.75 inches wide by 2 inches tall. Press the enter key, and there's my rectangle. Now I need to position it. Now let's again work with our top left hand corner handle or anchor point, and we know that our horizontal has to be in 0.25 inches because remember we're in this way. We didn't go all the way to the edge. Our tabs that we draw will do that for us, and we know that the vertical is going to be 6. Make sure the relative position is unchecked, copies are 0, and say apply. Notice here now that my rectangle is set up exactly where it needs to go. Now that we've drawn our rectangle, now we need to draw our tabs that go along here. That's going to be quite simple for us to do. I know our tabs are 1/4 of an inch, so let's draw a rectangle, and let's make it 0.25 inches by 0.25 inches. Press enter, and there's my tab. For positioning, I know that if we're going to gain work from the top left hand corner, I want it to go right here, which basically means it's 0 on the H, and I want it to be 5.75 or 6 minus 1/4. Select the apply button, and there's my tab there. Now I need to duplicate these 2 tabs down. So all I need to do here now is select relative position. My H is going to be 0 because I want it to be right below each other, and this distance here is going to be minus 0.5, right? Because it's 0.2 plus 0.2 because there needs to be a 0.25 inch space here, and I've got a number of copies of 2. So I say apply, and there's my tabs. Now all I need to do to generate my tabs on this side is move these over 3 inches. Again, move this to 1 because we only need 1 copy. This is going to be 3, and this is going to be 0. And then say apply. And there's my tabs there. So basically now what I've done is I've actually created my 2 tabs for each one, well, 1 tab for one side and the other set of tabs for the other side. Now that our tabs are created, we just need to select our tabs. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to weld these tabs to the actual bigger rectangle, and that's quite easy to do. Just go to the arrange command, shaping, and let's open up the shaping docker. Again, make sure your source and target are unchecked. We've got weld selected, and we can just say weld to, and notice how when I come out here my cursor now contains 2 rectangles that are actually welded together, so I know the weld is on. because the 6 tabs are selected, I need to tell the software that I want to weld those tabs to this rectangle. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to click on the edge of the rectangle, and there's my weld that's done. Now that I generated my box, I need to generate my cutout here before I can do the rest of my tabs. So let's go back to page 1 and let's cheat a little bit here, because I don't really know what the dimensions are anyway, so this is the easiest way to figure them out. I'm going to drag a guideline out that's basically going to come right to the edge of that tab and one to the edge of that tab. Now what I need to do, let's scroll down a little bit here, I just need to draw an ellipse here. So let's grab the ellipse and let's just draw. Now again, you can, as these guidelines are here, I can actually just draw that way, and I'm going to just shape the ellipse so that it's sort of close to what I want it to be. Again, it doesn't have to be bang right on, as long as it's close. And again, if you find that everything's snapping a little bit too much, you can always take off the snap to guidelines, and I'm going to move this up a little bit more. And again, not letting me go, so I'm just going to turn off the snap to objects for a second so I can just go a little bit beyond my area here. Now notice I'm not even here, so I'm just going to move over just a little bit here to be a little bit more even, and let's drag this down just a little bit. Again, don't forget, this is really going to be the arch of the music box, so it's not that big of a deal if we're out a little bit, because we're just going to create our own oval here anyways. So it's looking pretty good there, so let's just leave it at that. Got pretty good crossover here too. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit more. There we go. I want a little bit more of an arch. So now that I've got my circle done, I can actually now come up here and just copy that, which is cut or copy, and I can go to my next page, and because we know that when we paste something it goes in exactly the same spot, that works really well for me. So now that I've created the ellipse, all I need to do now is come over to my shaping dialog, select trim, and I've got my ellipse already selected, so I'm just going to say trim to the rectangle. And notice here now I've got my cutout, and I got a nice oval going here, a nice little arc here, which I think is a little bit better than the arc that was there. The only other thing I need to do now is I need to actually cut off this part of the oval, because if we go back to our original image, and let's just get rid of that oval now because we really don't need it. Notice here that there's a cut. So my tabs are going to come down, I'm going to cut this area here. So I really just need to shave off this part of the oval. So that's quite easy to do. I just need to come in here and draw a rectangle. And again, let's go back. Snap. Well, I can say snap to guidelines this time because I can snap to these guidelines that are already in. Now that I've got this, all I need to do now is to snap that rectangle and trim, well actually weld that rectangle to the actual shape here. Now the only problem I've got is I'm going to have a little bit of a drop here, so let's come back here and let's just take a look at this area here. So I don't really want to have a drop, so I'm going to move this up a little bit so I get my intersection basically right on the edge here. Okay, so all I need to do now is to select that rectangle, and we're going to say weld to here. And there, now I've got a nice straight cut off. And let's go back out to my view. Now I've got a nice cut here. Now all I really need to do is to generate my cutouts for my rectangles right here. So now we need to add our tab cutouts right here, and that's quite easy to do. So all we really need to do is to create the tabs for the cutout. Now they're not going to be 0.25 inches tall. If I come back here, they're actually going to be a bit bigger than that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make them 0.25 inches, actually half an inch long by 1/4 of an inch wide. So let's come back in here and let's make a rectangle, and it's going to be 0.25 inches wide by 0.5 inches tall. Again, we want it to be up here in the top left hand corner, and I want it to be centered. Now what I can do is I can actually zoom in on here. Because I moved my tab up a little bit, I'm actually off of my dimensions a little bit. There we go. That's all set. So now all I really need to do is to come back. Let's go back to my full view, and I've got a tab here. I know I basically want to go back and multiply this out halfway here, and then another one here, and again the movement is going to be 0.5 inches, and it's going to be a relative positional move, and it's going to be apply, and there's my tabs right there. I just need to select them like this, go to my shaping dialog box, select my trim command, and then I'm going to trim to my rectangle. So there I've got my shape all done and everything's ready to go. We can just come back in here, and then we can just save this, and let's save it into my documents.